The Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro has rejected the ultimatum to call elections within 8 days by some European countries. In an interview with CNN Turk in Caracas, he also said that U.S. President Donald Trump has not responded to his repeated call for a dialogue.
Europa ha tenido una posición insolente.
Europe has an insolent position, unsustainable, unpresentable, and it should withdraw its ultimatum. No one gives us ultimatums. If they want to leave Venezuela, they should all go. And now, Venezuela will continue its path. Fortunately, we do not depend on Europe. And those arrogant... I think it's implorable, though not impossible. I've sent many messages to Mr. Trump, but I think he's drowning in domestic problems, and I think that he looks down on us. He looks down on all of Latin America and the Caribbean. I think he looks down on the world. He thinks the world is inferior to the United States.
Maduro also talked about the opposition leader Juan Guaidó, saying he has violated the country's constitution by declaring himself as interim president.
I think opposition leader Juan Guaidó violated the constitution and all the laws. Now, I'm not the National Attorney General. It will be up to the Attorney General's office, the main court of justice, and the judicial power to decide the steps to follow in order to safeguard the Constitution. And we will wait for them. These are matters that will sort themselves out according to justice.
Also in Venezuela, President Maduro has met with the army at the Paramacay Fort ahead of military exercises in February. He said that their troops are ready to defend the country. He also said that in order to guarantee peace, we have to prepare ourselves. In this world, the brave, the courageous are respected, and we have to make Venezuela respected. On February 10th, Venezuela will carry out the largest military exercises in its history as the country fights against foreign intervention.
I want you to know that just like Commander Chavez, I feel like another soldier of this army. I feel like a soldier of the country. They want the army to take part in the coup. Will you? Or do you follow the Constitution? Are you pro-imperialism? Never traitors, always loyal.
Venezuelans have come out strongly to support President Nicolas Maduro. The rally began in several streets of capital Caracas, where they made their way to the presidential palace of Miraflores.
Venezuelans at the rally in Caracas made it very clear that they reject any possibility of violence and support a peaceful resolution through dialogue.
We support peace 100%. We are against everything the opposition is doing. They are very disrespectful to our president. They do not need to be a genius to understand that what they are doing is against the Constitution.
Venezuelans marched towards the presidential palace. They said the countries that support the opposition are following orders from the United States.
We are against the US and other countries interfering in our affairs. As Venezuelan citizens, we know that Venezuela is free and independent.
They took the opportunity to send messages to the President Nicolas Maduro.
We support the president and we are against terrorists who act violently in our country. We also reject the person who says he is the interim president. Our constitution does not allow that.
Waving national flags and chanting patriotically, the people of Caracas say they will keep supporting the Bolivarian Revolution and its leaders.
The United Nations Security Council on Saturday held an emergency meeting on the situation in Venezuela. Russia, China, and South Africa have thrown their weight behind the Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, strongly condemning the attempted power grab by the opposition leader. The United States had called for the emergency UN meeting on Venezuela after the U.S. recognized opposition leader Juan Guaidó as the interim president. Of the 15-member Security Council, 4 voted against the emergency session. 9 agreed to hold the meeting, while 2 member states abstained.
It does represent a threat to peace. It is
Venezuela's Foreign Minister Jorge Arreaza defended the constitutional government of Venezuela at the emergency meeting. He said that the United States is instigating a coup, and he provided evidence to the Council.
In this case, the United States is not behind the coup d'etat. It is in advance. It's in the vanguard of the coup d'etat. It is dictating the orders, not only to the Venezuelan opposition, but also to the satellite governments in the region, and it seems in Europe and the other parts of the world. As proof, we have tweets here from social media. We have appeals, calls to the security forces, to the Bolivarian National Army to take position against the legitimate authorities, against the constitutional government of President Maduro, by Secretary of State Pompeo and by Vice President Pence. It was on the 22nd where Vice President Pence, basically in a tweet, gave a green light for a coup d'etat in Venezuela.
Russia and China were at the forefront of the calls against foreign meddling in Venezuela.
The Russian Federation cannot support the attempts by our American colleagues to conduct a discussion of the situation in Venezuela. And in fact, introducing in our agenda issues formulated in this way, this is a gross abuse of the prerogatives of the members of the Security Council, especially, in particular, the permanent members. The internal situation in this Latin American country is not an item on the agenda of our council. We don't see any external threats coming from what is taking place in Venezuela. Venezuela does not represent a threat to peace and security. If anything does represent a threat to peace, it is the shameless and aggressive actions of the United States and their allies aimed at the ouster of the legitimately elected president of Venezuela.
At the Security Council, South Africa is strongly opposed to leadership changes executed outside of electoral processes.
South Africa is firmly against any attempt of undue or unconstitutional change of government of Venezuela. The Security Council should never be an instrument that validates an unconstitutional changes of any government anywhere, anytime. Instead, the Council should promote avenues that create an environment for conclusive, inclusive dialogue, and that cooperation that will ease the challenges and hardships faced by Venezuelan people.
Our correspondent in Pretoria, Matuba Maklatiche, has more.
South African ambassador to the United Nations has received a mandate from government, and that mandate is to express support for Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. South Africa's position differs with the United States, Canada, and several other South American countries, but South Africa says it is not prepared to support any government that is formed outside an electoral process, and South Africa has been consistent on this matter, including with neighboring Zimbabwe. So the Minister of International Relations here in South Africa, Lindiwe Sisulu, said the country's vote at the United Nations would be reviewed depending on whether there is a humanitarian crisis reported in Venezuela. Now, South Africa's position comes amid weekend reports, or reports that have emerged at the weekend, stating that several European powers have warned Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro to announce new election, or he must call elections within 8 days, or they will officially recognize the opposition's claim of leadership in that country. So this is going to be a story that develops throughout this week. It's back to you.
A day after the Security Council meeting, pro-Maduro rallies have taken place worldwide. a crowd gathered in Glasgow, Scotland, in solidarity with the Venezuelan president. The event was organized by the Glasgow Marxists outside the concert hall. Supporters carried flags and banners in favor of the Bolivarian Revolution. Another pro-Maduro demonstration took place in Baltimore, United States. People took to the street carrying banners of President Nicolas Maduro and Hugo Chavez, reading "The People's President," and placards saying "Hands off Venezuela." And in Syria, people gathered outside the Venezuelan embassy in Damascus. The demonstration was organized by the Syrian and Palestinian National Forces, who say that the Venezuelan people have always supported just causes of the Arab people.
The opposition uses some terms and phrases such as democracy and freedom, and seeks not to recognize a president who was elected by the people themselves, to present an unknown person who is an instrument of the imperialism.
We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this.
Víctor Jara poseía esa sensibilidad capaz de recoger la profundidad del pueblo.
Tuvo el talento y la humanidad, el sentido de humanidad, para poder mirar a su entorno con esos ojos, ¿no? De tal manera que pudo ser después un maestro para la comprensión de los dolores humanos.
Víctor asesinado. ¿Sabes que a Víctor le metieron 42 balas en el cuerpo?
Telesur Documentaries.
Welcome back. At least 15 people have been killed in Peru after a mudslide hit a hotel during a wedding celebration. 34 people were wounded, 5 are in critical condition. An avalanche of rocks and mud hit a wall at the hotel after midnight, causing it to collapse as people were celebrating. Firefighters in Brazil are evacuating over 20,000 people in the state of Minas Gerais, as there might be a risk of a second dam collapse. Officials say that the situation is dangerous and that they are monitoring both dams. At least 37 people have been killed and around 200 are still missing after the dam bursted on Friday.
I lost many friends, many colleagues. I am very sad, devastated. There are no words to speak because the pain is so great. I lost so many friends. My colleagues from haciendas lost cattle. They lost everything, everything, everything.
Bolivians have voted in the first primary elections in the country. Thousands of polling stations were prepared for around 2 million voters to elect candidates of 9 political parties. The chosen candidates will run for the presidential elections in October 2019. President Evo Morales has already cast his ballots, in which he calls to be an historic moment.
Bolivia is experiencing historic moments. This time, we are expanding not only Bolivian democracy, but the democratization of Bolivia's parties and political movements is starting. It is going further.
Electoral campaign for the presidential elections in El Salvador has closed on Sunday. Thousands of supporters attended the closing campaign of the FMLN ruling party in San Salvador. The party's presidential candidate, Hugo Martinez, addressed the crowd and asked for their support. The right-wing coalition Nationalist Republican Alliance and the Ghana Party also campaigned in different parts of the capital. Candidate Nayib Bukele from the Ghana Party is leading the latest polls. The elections are set for February 3rd.
On February 3rd, we will put an end to bipartisanship. On that day, we will leave behind the post-war, once and for all.
A vigil has been held in Guatemala for the migrant boy who died in the United States custody. People gathered to pay their tribute for the 8-year-old boy. His body was repatriated from the U.S. on Friday night. The kid died due to a flu under U.S. custody in December. He was traveling with his father, who was trying to migrate to the United States.
It was something like negligence, they said. They did not rule it out properly, that the boy had the flu. They did not carry out the test properly. The guilty ones are the doctors because even though he was a migrant, they must have given importance to the situation to avoid getting to this. If they had given him the medical treatment, I think the death of the child would have been avoided.
Every year, Honduras loses 10% of its GDP due to corruption. According to some organizations, this is a problem of the whole state system.
According to the National Anti-Corruption Council, Honduras loses around $1 billion due to corruption. The majority of public institutions are involved, and the ones in charge of investigating have proven to be ineffective.
Unfortunately, we haven't been effective as a country to sanction illegal profit. This keeps corruption alive, and every public worker of any public institution can commit this crime and know that the chances of being identified by the judiciary are very limited.
There have been many reports on how almost 50% of the health sector's budget is lost because of corruption. This has caused deaths because the system lacks equipment and medicine in the medical centers.
49% of the budget is wasted by corruption. This is very serious and painful because we are talking about the health system. This costs people's lives. They die directly because of this. This was recently reported by the Association for a More Just Society.
In many cases, corruption is linked to high state officials that were hired due to political connections and not for professional merit. In these cases, they try to avoid their responsibility.
The positions they get are not always linked to their merits. And this is probably one of the main reasons that cause institutions to not work as they should. They use the excuse of having too much work so that they're not held responsible.
The officials responsible for monitoring institutions from the government avoid responsibility by blaming the failure of the fight against corruption.
We don't have more than 300 million to process all the public administration of 298 municipalities.
One of the worst consequences of corruption is poverty that affects 68% of the population, and that in itself prompts massive migration. More than 400 Hondurans are leaving the country every day.
Pope Francis has called for a peaceful resolution to the Venezuelan situation. The Pope also referred to the situation in Venezuela as dangerous and said he's concerned for the Venezuelan people. The Pope is in Panama for a 5-day visit to attend the World Youth Day.
I've been thinking a lot about the Venezuelan people here in Panama, particularly these days. I feel for them. In face of the grave situation they are going through, I pray the Lord that a just and peaceful solution is reached to overcome the crisis. I begin my pilgrimage in this historical place where Simón Bolívar said that if the world had to choose its capital, the Isthmus of Panama will be chosen. In his time, Bolívar gathered the worldwide leaders to fulfill the dream of building the Patria Grande, or Hispanic American unity. That concept helped us to understand, create, and dream about the construction of a Patria Grande that knows how to integrate and respect the wealth of multiculturalism of each people, nation, and culture.
More news in a minute. Stay with us. Welcome back. A sperm bank for penguins has been created in South Africa as a way to secure the life of African species. African penguins are the only species listed as endangered with the threat of facing extinction. Scientists say this is a contingency plan that might stop the continuous decline of the species.
Found in Africa Africa, you don't see other types of African penguins along the other countries, but people come here just to see that African penguin. If they aren't here within the next 10 years, there's nothing for them to come to South Africa for, and this is what makes it special. So with us having this sperm collection and in vitro, this could potentially bring up a lot more for our future, especially making sure that generations to come can see a penguin species on our coastline.
While the LGBTQI community is protected by South Africa's constitution, the reality for many members of the community is quite different. Many LGBT South Africans still have a hard time finding employment, and they often face exclusion.
So my name is Ditseho. Yes, very lazy parents. My name is my surname. People always think I made a mistake, but my name is my surname. And I am a journalist by profession. I am a PhD candidate. And I'm also a transgender woman and activist. And my pronouns are she and her.
While decorated with university degrees, Ditseho says her identity as a transgender woman makes it almost impossible to land a good job.
A lot of transgender women end up as sex workers because we find it hard to find jobs, because employers don't know what to do with us. And we are a very qualified people. I know a lot of transgender graduates, but when you go for an interview, bosses almost see you as a minefield. They don't know how to deal with you. They don't know what to call you. They don't know how to step. They walk around eggshells around you. They literally see you as a lawsuit waiting to happen, because they feel like, I know myself, I will say the wrong thing, I will misgender her or use the wrong pronoun, and she'll sue us, you know.
She says transgender people are forced to become activists in South Africa because of the ignorance that prevails. Many well-known people in the country have come out as either members or supporters of the LGBTI community. Some have even written about it, but society remains conservative.
People demand you to explain, you know, heterosexual people, I call it heterosexual privilege, straight privilege, where people feel that because I'm straight, I'm right, and because you're not straight, you're somehow wrong. And sometimes it's not even, so they feel like they deserve an explanation. And I found myself in situations like that, and I find that a bit unfair, because, you know, when people want information about, I don't know, a soccer game or an album, or they want lyrics to a song, they don't hesitate to go on the net. But, you know, with things like this, they feel like, I'm not going to go on the net, you are going to explain it to me.
If you've just joined us, welcome to it. You're listening to The Gay Agenda with me.
Many African countries still use the colonial anti-gay laws to suppress expression or dialogue about sexuality and gender identity. South Africa, with its progressive constitution, still has a society that won't accept people like Ditseho. Now the question remains, what is their recourse? Matuba Mahlachi, Telesur, Pretoria.
Angola's parliament has decriminalized homosexuality after voting for renewal of its penal code. Parliamentarians voted on Wednesday to remove the vices against nature clause in its law. They also banned discrimination based on someone's sexuality. This is the first overhaul of the country's criminal code since its independence from Portugal in 1975. Now it's time to bring you some other stories from around the world.
At least 18 people have been killed in a twin bomb explosion at a Catholic church on the southern Philippine island of Jolo. The blast occurred when Mass was being celebrated. The second bomb reportedly killed troops as they helped to rescue the wounded. The island is an Islamic militant stronghold who demand independence from the Philippines. Over 70,000 people have rallied in the capital of Brussels, Belgium, to demand that the government takes action against climate change. They call on the government to adopt renewable energies and improve air quality. It's the fourth climate change march organized in 2 months.
It's our conscience that made us come today because we wonder what kind of future I will give my child. Before, without a child, I probably wouldn't have come to this demonstration. I would have thought that it is just another protest. But today I am thinking of my child's future. So this is not for me, this is for the next generation.
An explosion caused by a gas leak in an apartment building in The Hague, in the Netherlands, has injured 9 people. The Hague Fire Department said that 7 of the injured have been taken to nearby hospitals. Local media reported that one person is stuck under the rubble. The fire department continues the rescue operation, but the instability of the building complicates the operation.
And with this story, we come to the end of this news brief. This and many other stories you can find on our website at telesurenglish.net. And don't forget to follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. Thank you for watching.